This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Thursday. This is an interesting, literally as I'm sitting here, I just paused or stopped listening to Donald Trump's tariff announcement, Liberation Day, because I'm like, I gotta get on with doing things. It's like I can't possibly keep up to how fast the world is moving right now, as hard as I try, folks. So today's episode is broken into two. The first half is, or the first part interview is Martin Armstrong. We recorded it before the tariff, anything to do with tariffs. And then the second one is Maxime Bernier, which we recorded just as the tariffs started, or as the announcements were coming out. And so it's a two-part interview, separate. They're not together. And yeah, you get Martin Armstrong for the first half, Maxime Bernier for the second half. If you hopped on X or YouTube last night, you got Maxime Bernier. I figured, with the Canadian election, things can change so quick. There's no point in holding on to that for even 24 hours, so we put it up as fast as humanly possible. But here on the podcast, you got today a double header of Martin Armstrong followed by Maxime Bernier. So buckle up. Down in the show notes, we'll put what time you can skip to if you want to get to Maxime first or what have you. Yeah, you get the point. Before we get there, let's talk a little bit of everything moving as fast as humanly possible in the world of news. When it comes to gold and silver, though, you can trust on Silver Gold Bull being there for you, okay? Holy Mackinaw, the news cycle is just it's giving me a headache, honestly. 5 shows a week, can't keep up with what's going on. It's just full throttle, let's go. So maybe you should reach out to Graham for details on the feature of the day, which is junk silver. I don't call it junk. I think it's perfectly fine and may be needed depending on who the next leader of Canada is. You just never know. He can also answer any questions you may have around buying, selling, storing, or using your retirement account to invest in precious metals. Anytime you're on silvergoldbull.ca or .com, depending on which side of the border you're on, just reference the SNP. Hey, you say, hey, heard about you from the Sean Newman Podcast. That helps me, helps them, helps you, and, appreciate it. Here in April, oh man, you know what? Let's just take all the crumminess of the world for a second and we're just going to crumple it up. We're going to throw it into the dumpster for a second, okay? Days are getting longer, and I know that, one day it's oh my God, it is. Here in Lloydminster, at least, it is, what was it, +2, everything's melting. Next morning you wake up, it's -8, winds howling. Well, that's April. Hopefully, warmer days are ahead. I believe they are. And while you can count on weather to be exactly what it is at this time of year, you can also count on Guardian Plumbing and Heating. These guys have been keeping homes, farms, and businesses running smoothly since 2010. Yeah. And they got one of the things that sets them apart is how they make life easier on you, the customer. They got technicians on shift from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day, including weekends, and they don't charge you anything extra for evening or weekend service. That means you can get the help you need on your schedule without worrying about surprise costs. Just go to www.guardianplumbing.ca for all the information. Ignite Distribution. They're a high-service supply company based out of Wainwright, Alberta, specializing in automotive parts and a wide range of additional products, including safety equipment, welding supplies, fasteners, and janitorial items. They're operating as a Napa Auto Parts retailer, and I asked Grok, I was like, hey, what can you tell me about this? And so I was on the phone with Shane as I'm doing it. I'm like, it says here you expanded in Wainwright to a location of 15,000 square foot facility? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I didn't know that. I'm a freaking Grok, right? AI telling me new things about what I should already known. And that's I guess, one of the powers of AI is it's going to dig into all these different things. Probably not that hard of a thing to dig down to. Anyways, they got their start in 2011. This is Ignite Distribution. They got exceptional customer service. I'm talking Shane Stafford and team. If you want somebody to reduce downtime and purchasing costs for your business, reach out to Shane Stafford, 780-842-3433. Substack, free to subscribe to. It's the one spot you want to help the podcast along. Okay, there's multiple ways here, but one is Substack. You're going to get behind-the-scenes access to the debriefs of all the episodes. If you're watching Martin Armstrong today, we did a debrief on it yesterday. You can go back and see my thoughts, interact, put your thoughts in, and there's a community going there that's been really interesting to read the comments and hear how people are their thoughts on different episodes. So if you want that, that's the one way to do it. It's $8 a month. It's I think relatively cheap. And when it comes to independent media, which I am, I don't take government subsidies and a whole bunch of other things. You want to be a part of the team and help it along? Hey, sign up, Substack. You can also do it for free and get the weekend review every Sunday, 5 p.m. The Cornerstone Forum. I tell you what, literally Vance Crowe again today is like, you know what? It feels like it's divine intervention that it's May 10th. And I kind of chuckle. I'm like, what? He's like, well, think about it. You're less than 2 weeks after your election. No matter which way it goes, people are going to be craving to get together and talk about the year ahead. And you think if you are leaning at all in the camp of, man, if Carney gets in, oh, man, you're going to want to be there. Just simply put, all the people you're going to want to be there, all the people you're going to want to hear from are going to be there. And so don't wait. Get your ticket. If you're at all worried that you're going by yourself, I just looked. There's like half the people coming right now are individuals. They're not coming as big, giant groups. They're coming as one here, two there. You get the point. It's a welcoming, eclectic group of human beings. So don't wait. Buy your ticket down in the show notes today. That is May 10th in Calgary, and excited. It's coming real fast. Also, the new studio, I was saying, there's one way to support the podcast, that's Substack. The other way that is going to be really cool here when it gets up and running is going to be the new studio, and we're building a legacy wall in there. So if you want to get your company logo or your name on the wall, well, just reach out to me. We'll find a way. We're looking for skills, labor, materials, money. You get the point. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. That helps. Like, retweet, all the good stuff. Do it. And earlier this week, I feel like I forgot to mention this. It's been 3 years of full-time podcasting. So to all you lovely people, as I blabber on for the 7th minute, and somebody's like, your intros are getting longer. I guess they are. It's been, I don't know. I didn't think this life was possible. And saying that, my brain at times hurts because I'm like, I'm going as fast as I can go to try and give you the most relevant information at all times and track down some of the greatest guests. And that wouldn't be possible without all of you fine people who text me on the daily or send emails, give me a phone call, all the great things that you, the audience, have become. It is truly amazing. And the fact that I've been answering to no one but you for 3 years has been just... I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So my hat's off to you. On April Fool's, April 1st, it is not an April Fool's Day. Whatever reason for having that as my first year, my first day of full-time. That has been 3 years now. So 2022, coming off of the Freedom Convoy and 54 days of not podcasting to start out full-time, and now here 3 years later to still be doing it. My hat's off to all of you for continuing to follow me along this ride. That's all I got. So let's get on to that tale of the tape. The first guest is CEO of Armstrong Analytics. The second is the founder and leader of the People's Party of Canada. I'm talking about Martin Armstrong and Maxime Bernier. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Today I'm joined by Martin Armstrong. Martin, thanks for giving me some time today.
Are we starting now?
Yeah, I guess so. Yes. Yeah, I'm going to wind you up. I might as well get you rolling.
All right.
Where I was going with well, let's start here, because what we were talking about was Liberation Day. Today, as we record this, is the coined Liberation Day, where Trump's going to supposedly just tariff the entire world. And now I was walking in this morning. I'm like, oh, I wish I would have had the foresight to have seen And I knew it was coming today. I just, in my head, I'm like, it'll be early enough. They'll announce, and then now we have to wait. So I guess my thought is, not knowing exactly what Donald Trump is going to say. What are your thoughts on this Liberation Day? This we're going to tariff the world day. We talked about it last time you were on, Martin. It seems like he is going to tariff the crap out of everyone. Although we've seen a lot of, I don't know, can I say bluster from Trump? Like, what's the word? Because he's talked. I mean, all we talked about now for this entire year, maybe even more, has been tariffs, and it's been kind of off again, on again, and then China comes in and tariffs 100% of canola and different things here in Saskatchewan, and nobody talks about that, right? So I'm like, my brain is hurting a little bit here. What do you see? What do you hear? What are your thoughts?
Well, I disagree with him on the whole tariff issue. That it's going to be liberation and all this sort of stuff. Look, what he's acting on is pretty much all the economic theories that we were taught in school years ago. I mean, this is Canada's problem, that each province acts as if it's a country and puts tariffs on the other provinces. I mean, this all stems from this idea of Marxism and protecting jobs and all that stuff. And I just disagree with it because, there was a guy before him, and it was largely David Ricardo, who argued opposite of this and said that countries should have, foster the comparative advantage. In other words, you don't try and grow lettuce in the middle of the Saudi Arabian desert and have to keep watering it to make it grow. And it costs you $10 a head when you can buy it for 50 cents from somebody else. So this idea of protecting jobs, it's basically reduces the standard of living for everybody else because I'm paying somebody more than I should. I mean, example of that was like all the crazy unions. New York City used to be the largest port. Then unions got involved. We want this, we want that, we want, what happened? Everybody left. There's no, commerce that goes to New York City anymore. And Trump in raising taxes, yes, he's historically correct that before all this Marxist nonsense of 1913 with the income tax, that the country was funded by tariffs. True. But we didn't have all these socialized programs. And the government was not endless. The problem you have with any government, we're seeing it here in the U.S. at the state level. You've got it in the province level. As governments basically are under stress because they don't know how to run anything properly anymore, really. And so they always are trying to grab more and more power. And we just saw it, for example, with Seattle. They put in, we're going to tax labor. And they put in basically a poll tax, a hit per head. And, we're going to raise $400 million. Instead of reforming what you're doing, it's always, how can I get more? So what happened? Companies started leaving. Labor started leaving. They just had announced, we have a deficit of $47 billion in payroll taxes because people are leaving. They don't get it that people can actually pick up and leave. And the problem we have, and back in the 1840s, when Andrew Jackson shut down the Bank of the United States, the central bank. All your individual banks started issuing their own money. It turned into what became known as the wildcat banking days. And that they were defaulting, they were issuing notes with no backing, etc., and everything collapsed. And that followed, the Panic of 1837, and it was called the hard times of the 1840s. States defaulted, not the federal government, but states, because states were trying to bail out the banks, and they went down with them. That's what we're really facing here. People are talking, the Fed, the debt, etc., all this. Very nice, but they're not paying attention to the state and municipal levels. What's the difference? The federal government can create the money to bail itself out. It can monetize itself out. States and municipalities cannot. All they have is basically they either reform or raise taxes. And that's what you're seeing. So Seattle, is like a Marxist paradise. They just thought endless. We'll just keep raising taxes to fund everything we ever dreamed about. And people left. All right. Chicago, absolute disaster. And there's a migration in the U.S. from the blue states to the red states. Here in Florida, we have no state income tax. We have a balanced budget. Okay? I mean, what's the problem here? I mean, the rest of them, it's like everybody wants to just fund, their great-grandchildren going to college or something. How much can I steal? So the real threat that we have here is we're heading into a recession, and I do think that Trump is going to be blamed for it with these tariffs. They'll bring, Smoot Hawley, that's created, that's not true. But, a lot of people still blame the tariffs for creating the Great Depression. And so I think, they're going to drag that out and blame Trump for this because we're heading into a recession. When I did our conference back in November last year, I said, look, I wish them all the best of luck, but the computer shows we're going into recession, and I don't care who's there. This is global. All right, so no individual leader of a country can reverse the trend of the entire world. So Trump's idea of tariffs and Liberation Day and all this stuff, I'm sorry, I just don't see it working. We have way too much in social programs, and you're finding out with Elon Musk and Doge, funding transgender opera in Colombia. Some of these things are like, how bizarre can you get to get money? I don't know. They're even talking about creating cockroach milk, which would be more healthy. Who's going to milk the cockroach now? I don't know. It's just like whatever happened to common sense in the good old days, I could walk out of the house that didn't lock the door. It was no big deal. It seems like whatever we used to have is gone. So, Trump is just working off of those same idiotic theories that we were taught in school way back when. And actually, they're still teaching them today. Keynesian economics has failed. Raising interest rates, lowering interest rates to affect us, that theory was from the 1930s. The U.S. had a balanced budget. So it didn't affect them. It affected us. Now the governments are the biggest borrower in the room. So now it affects them. And that's what the Fed is finding out. And all these central banks, they're in trouble because they've lost the ability to theoretically control the economy. Under Keynesian economics, it's just crumbled to the floor.
When you talk recession, and that you see that coming no matter who's in power, and it's going to affect everyone, all the different countries, who, like, sitting here is just a nobody talking to Martin. I go, Martin, if I was to be paying attention, what country or what area of the world are you like, this is where it's going to start and it's going to bleed from there outwards? Or is it going to hit everybody all at the same time?
You've got major debt problem in Japan, but also Europe. This is why Europe is beating the war drums. All right. They know they're in trouble. And they never look at reform because that means you have to relinquish power. So it's always about how do I retain power, if not get more. As you know, when they created the euro, they came to me and I sat down. This is how we do it. Okay. And it was Herman Kohl that said, you can't consolidate the debt. And he took Germany into the euro without the German people allowed to vote. So back in 98, I said, this is not going to work. All right. I was told then that we just have to get the euro in other words, creating the bureaucracy, and we'll worry about the debts later. Here we are, 2025, nothing's ever been done. And from a trader's perspective, because some people might not understand why it was said it would collapse. Before, if you were bullish Germany or bearish, France, you would buy the Deutschmark and short the franc. All right. Well, the euro is going to create a single currency, eliminate all that. Very nice. Okay. However, the fact that they did not consolidate the debt. If I want to invest $100 billion, I can pick up the phone and say, buy me, 100 billion US treasuries. No problem. Even Canada debt. All right. Europe, I can't. I still have to make the same decision. Oh, do I want Germany? Do I want France? Do I want Italy? Because there's no consolidation. That's what's tearing it apart.
So just so I'm clear there, when you I think I heard this correct. When you say you pick up the phone, you go, I want to buy some US debt, boom, done. Canada, boom, done. Europe, it's like, well, we don't have consolidated debt. So you actually have to decide, are you taking on Germany's, or are you taking on France, or are you taking on and on and on? Did I hear that correct? And
Yes.
why did they never consolidate?
Mainly because Herman Kohl, who was Chancellor of Germany at the time, he knew and admitted before he died that he acted like a dictator. And he said if he allowed the German people to vote, he knew he would have lost 7-3, and there would never have been a euro. All right. So he took Germany in to the euro on an executive order. All right. And the people were never allowed to vote. Nothing. Pure democracy. And that's what happened. And it has never been addressed. They sell the euro. Here's an example why it's collapsing. First, they promised everybody, oh, we'll be paying a single interest rate like the United States. And I said, in order to do that, it has to consolidate the debt. Couldn't do it. All right. Now look at what they're doing to Hungary. Hungary basically is against war. They set up the Eurozone basically, oh, okay, fine. Everybody will have a vote and it has to be unanimous, so no country will be able to dominate another. That's just out the window. We want war with Russia. Okay, so what do? Well, you're stripping Hungary of its right to vote. Everything they have promised and said from the beginning is a lie. It's collapsing. This is why they need war, because they need a diversion. Look, you're seeing the same thing in Canada. Carney's really running against Trump. Oh, his vote for me, he's going to annex, Canada and 51st state and all this stuff. He's not running against another Canadian. He's running against Trump. This is what's going on in Europe. All right. Oh, it's Putin. Putin wants to come in. If Ukraine falls, he'll take all of Europe. But then on the other hand, NATO says, well, Ukraine has seriously weakened Russia and we can take it in 3 days. So which is true? This is the problem you get. Whatever comes out of government is always a lie. Even Winston Churchill said, in times of war, truth is so precious, it needs a bodyguard of lies to protect it.
That's what Churchill said?
That's what Churchill said.
Well, I don't know about you, but I sit here and I go, we're at war. We're just, certainly in Ukraine, it's kinetic. But but everywhere else, it's this, it's this information war. It's constant. It's just you go online, you go into, you watch the media and how they perceive events and how they talk about it. I'm like, that to me is war right in front of us, is it not?
Yeah, look, the media has constantly done this all the time. I remember when I was in 8th grade history class, I was told that the Spanish-American War was created by the press. And that was basically Pulitzer versus Hearst. And he ended up creating a war that never really should have happened. Spain never attacked our boat. I mean, there were even emails back or texts and telexes from Hearst saying, you just give me the pictures, I'll create the war. To sell newspapers. I was taught that in 8th grade. And so they weren't hiding it back then.
What do you, just on that story, creating a war where people are going to die just to sell newspapers. Where does Martin put that on the level of, like, I don't even know where to put that. That to me is like about as I don't do the show to create a war so that I can talk about something. I'm like, I would love to just talk about the Oilers trying to have a chance at the Stanley Cup, but like the world just doesn't want to do that. And so, so instead we're sitting here. I can't imagine me and Martin sitting here devising a plan so that we could have war, so people could go off and die and we could talk about that, so we could sell something. Yeah, that seems like a level of evil. Well, probably Klaus Schwab knows a little bit about, to be honest. But like, I don't know. Where do you factor that in?
Well, making it even worse, Pulitzer made so much money from creating a fake war. He donated what he made to Columbia University, and then they hand out the Pulitzer Prize to award-winning journalists. The father of yellow journalism. So he tries to clean up his reputation by putting all this money in for an award to do exactly opposite of what he did. Come on. Look, all this stuff, I mean, with Ukraine, as soon as you look at a piece, Russia invaded unprovoked. Come on. The evidence is overwhelming. All right, Victoria Nuland was there on 2014 handing out sandwiches. You had John McCain standing on the stage, overthrow your government, America's with you. Can you imagine if Putin did that at Congress? Or what if Trump came up and stood there in Ottawa, basically said,
we gave
your government?
Up here, we gave a standing ovation to a Nazi. So I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, like Canada's
Yeah.
had its own things. I mean, I'm like, ew, this world and certainly the Canadian government right now. When you look at central banks and you're like, central banks are in trouble. In my, albeit short, folks, but in my research, when the banking families' interests get attacked, get weakened, et cetera, war seems to follow that. So when you're talking about central banks are in trouble, shouldn't the next logical thing, even though I mean logical from the standpoint of looking at the cycles of history and how bankers influence things, would the easy answer be we're heading to war no matter what? Like they're just going to find a way to throw us into the fray?
Well, it's not the central banks that are doing that. This is really the politicians. And for example, I had put out on my blog, and I knew 3 days in advance of Zelensky going to the White House that it was going to be a confrontation. He was going there to deliberately try to embarrass Trump. How did I know? Because Boris Johnson, who hopped on a plane to go over there and kill the peace deal that they had with between the two of them, was there in Kiev 3 days in advance. The signing of that deal was supposed to have been in Kiev. He instructed him, no, you go to the White House and you make this into a real, they thought they could embarrass Trump into keeping the money going for war. I mean, I passed along what I had, but clearly I think they listened to somebody. Who it was, I don't know. But they knew what was coming down. And that fiasco.
So you're saying Boris Johnson flew to Ukraine?
Yes. It was there 3 days in advance.
Before Zelensky went to the White House?
Oh, yes. Look, I have very good sources.
Listen, Martin, there's a reason why you're on the show. I hadn't heard that. So that is news to me. I'm like, okay. So Boris went there, told Zelensky, no, you're not going there, you're going there.
Right.
To try and embarrass Trump.
Into keeping the money going to Ukraine for war.
Well, that backfired, did it not?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't that seem like you think they're so smart, and you're like, but that's like you're dealing with Trump here.
They're not. Look, the thing is, why did they do all those criminal charges against Trump? Because in their playbook, if he's a criminal, then that will discredit him and people won't vote for him. This is the way they think. However, people are looking through this veil of complete BS. The confidence in government. And you can look at the Gallup poll. I believe it's down to 10-15%. I mean, it's number 2 from the bottom. I don't remember what was bottom, trash collectors or something. I don't know. But I mean, the media is no longer trusted. I mean, it's just, and I mean, I do podcasts all over the world. And I hear the same thing. Doesn't matter. I'm doing in Brazil, Serbia, you name it. Palermo. I mean, I hear the same thing all the time. Doing one in Palermo, and they're talking about Italy should get the hell out of the EU. I mean, it's you just hear this systemically all over the place. In Germany, I can tell you what they're doing right now is alarming. The hospitals are already running drills to prepare for war.
In Germany?
In Germany. This is no BS. Staff in Germany told me someone who was 60 years old was told to report.
Can I ask you a question? Well, obviously I can. I've been staring at this Carney thing for a while because it's really bugging me. I'm sure it's bugging lots of Canadians. When I look at it from what I can see, and I keep trying to walk myself through this because I feel like maybe I'm missing something. You watch Pierre Poilievre go to everywhere he goes in Canada, and it's just like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people are showing up. Then you have Carney float in on a parachute, boop. And then the night before the Liberal vote to decide who the new leader is going to be, they take out 250,000 people, whoop, and they only allow 150,000 votes to go through. Oops, slam majority. It was all Carney. And I'm like, okay, well, that's BS, but whatever. Now he's in an election where every time it seems he shows up anywhere, they're excluding people from getting in the event, right? They're not allowing everybody in. And obviously protecting them from hard questions. The media, when they do ask anything that isn't just a softball, he fumbles it bad. It's not great. I've talked to many of the French-speaking parts of Canada. They say he's not a great French-speaking person at all. And so I go, okay, but his ties are to all the things that I've been on this show taught to believe are not great parts of this world.
Yeah.
So you're talking about them running drills in Germany, and that is about as serious as it gets, right? To like actually going in. Carney's talking about aligning himself with Europe, and Freeland was talking about the nuclear powers with France and England, and we need to have those in alignment in case the U.S. comes up. Now you got U.S. doing tariffs, and I'm like, I guess my question is, if there is a question, because I'm just like, I'm trying not to act like I'm going insane. Like, that's the problem, Martin, as I'm like, maybe Sean just needs to take a break and act like this isn't all happening. But I look at it and I go, it feels like 2019 here in Canada, where Pierre Poilievre, by all accounts, is winning a lot of different things. But now the polls show a flip, and they're doing all, and do I trust all the polls? No, I don't. But that's what it looks like. And it feels and acts like the media is giving him a pass, and that Carney's all of a sudden going to be the guy who's the head of our country in 26, 25 days, whatever it is. What do you see and hear from down south?
Look, Carney is basically he's joined at the hip with Klaus Schwab and the whole crew over there. What is really behind all this is that they really think that they can conquer Russia. As completely bizarre as it sounds, all right? That they can conquer Russia. Russia has $75 trillion in natural resources. That's twice the size of the U.S. national debt. Europe has convinced itself that if they can pull this off, they will rise like the Roman Empire to the top of the world again, and the U.S. will be subservient to them. And I mean, I had this conversation with somebody very high up in Europe. I mean, it's like, well, what about, nukes? Well, what I've been told, Putin will never push the button because he knows the nuclear wave will and fallout will blow back on him. I said, okay, yeah. If I have a gun, you're coming in my house, you're breaking in my house, and I'm not going to use it.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that as well, Martin.
Yeah, look, I mean, Julius Caesar said, more than 2,000 years ago, people believe what they want to believe. And he was correct. You can look up that quote. It was very true. They want to believe that they can resurrect the old, Europe as the bastion of civilization. Macron is, he has a Napoleon complex.
Macron?
Macron, and the same thing with, this stems. It started even with Charles de Gaulle. All right. He wanted all nuclear weapons removed from France, and he's told the Americans, "I want you out of here." And he said, "I don't want any Americans on French soil." The reply was, "Does that include the dead ones?" There are declassified documents that have surfaced, all right, that show the CIA created the European community. Why? Because they thought if everybody banded together, that would be the buffer against communist Russia. De Gaulle objected. So what happened? They threatened to withhold the Marshall funds from France. He finally relented and said he would accept Germany, but not Britain. These hatreds in Europe go back centuries. All right. The French hate the British no matter what, because basically they feel that had Napoleon won at Waterloo, the world would be speaking French. He was even there in Canada in 1967, telling Quebec basically to separate. You're French, you're not English. This stuff has been going on for a long time. When they put in the train underneath the English Channel, where did the English bring it to? Waterloo Station. Look, what he did was England. They created the EU. The CIA funded it. All right. Britain was not allowed to join the EU until de Gaulle died. You can look up all this timeline. This is the way it is. And he accepted Germany, but not Britain. And he hated Americans. So, this is, look at Turkey versus Greece. Two NATO countries. Greece, got an allotment of fighter jets, and the reply was, now we can do a sneak attack on Turkey. It's in the press. Look, the hatred between those two countries goes back to Alexander the Great. This stuff's been going on for such a long time. And you talk to anybody in the surrounding countries around Ukraine, and they hate their guts. They basically tell you, if you're going to shake hands with a Ukrainian, not just count your fingers, make sure you still have your arm. They're the most corrupt government around. Even in the Panama Papers listed them as number one. More politicians with offshore accounts than anybody. But that's the way into Russia. The Russians say, why didn't God, create mountains there between Ukraine and Moscow? Napoleon went in. That's how you go in to try and conquer Moscow. You got to go through Ukraine. And look, Ukraine has been plenty of documents showing that, the reason they were neo-Nazis is because Hitler promised, if you joined us, when we win, I'll give you your country. Ukraine was never a country. I don't give a shit what anybody says. Just look at the monetary history. There are no Ukrainian coins before 1991, period. All right. They're occupied by Poland. They're occupied by Russia. And the very word Ukraine means borderland. So they're kind of like the Kurds in Iraq. Always, wanted their own country, but didn't have one. And the only reason all this is taking place is because our neocons have used Ukraine as the vanguard against Russia. Um, I mean, it's just it's pathetic. When there was a peace deal, um, and Putin talked about that in that Tucker interview, and everybody goes, "Oh, wow, why did he talk to him? That's ridiculous." Look, if you don't talk to the enemy, there's only one solution: war, not peace. All right. So, and Putin was telling the absolute truth. Boris Johnson, again, hopped on the plane, went over, told Zelensky, you're not allowed to sign that peace deal.
Who, in your opinion, who's given Boris Johnson his marching orders? Because maybe I'm wrong on this, Martin. Maybe he's playing an excellent role. I look at Boris Johnson, I go, that guy isn't the brilliant one sitting there pulling the strings.
No, he's not. He's just the go-to guy. They send him in because he's a politician. Rather than sending in somebody like basically Victoria Nuland, Blinken. So, look, I mean, NATO is simply a retirement home for neocons. Simple as that. But what I'm saying, he hopped on a plane to kill the peace deal, made the front page news in Ukraine. And so this has all been published.
Yeah.
All right. And from the Ukrainians, I mean, we had employees in Kiev and in Donetsk, one on each side. All right. So basically, what the Ukrainians say is the average person on the street, they wonder who's in charge of their country. It's not Zelensky. And they wonder, are we allowed to even have peace without permission from London and Washington? I don't blame them. I mean, this is, look, Zelensky ran for peace when he ran for election. And
if people are wondering, that's your dog snoring, yes?
Yeah.
I can imagine people are, what does that sound? But it's funny because the first time I ever interviewed Martin, it started and we talked about it after. I'm like, oh, it's just a dog sleep. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it depends how she has her head, basically. She's a Frenchie.
A little bit of humor in this chat isn't that big of it's an added plus, I think. You get talking about how dark and nefarious some of this stuff going on is. It's just wild to me. Like, I think here in Canada, we sit and watch some of the things going on, and like in our own country, I'm watching possibly the Liberal government have a shot, even to be in the conversation of having a shot after the 10 years they've drug us through is insane. I was thinking about it this morning. We got 11 MPs that are tied up in foreign collusion. Nobody knows who they are. And I'm like, does that mean they get to run again in the election? Like, isn't that, like, this is what's going to happen in our country? Like, what? What are we doing here? Like, I feel like a banana republic at this point.
I do know basically Anna Paulina Luna, who Trump appointed. She's in charge of going through all these conspiracy theories and getting stuff out. And I had a client who knew Jim Garrison, who is the guy that did in New Orleans to investigate the JFK assassination. And what's come out of that is finally one document they've been hiding for such a long time. One CIA agent basically got all upset told friends that they had taken out JFK and that he was afraid for his life because he objected. What I can tell you is that, maybe even go back and watch Oliver Stone's movie on the JFK. These neocons have been at this since the 60s. On YouTube, you can also look up Robert McNamara. He was a neocon back then that took us into Vietnam. Before he died, I guess maybe he finally got to his conscience, and he did a video. It's on YouTube, and he said he was sorry, we were wrong. We thought Russia was behind Vietnam. He said it was just a civil war. 53,000 Americans died because he was wrong. And how many millions Vietnamese? If you look at what the assassination of JFK was about, the very next day after he was assassinated, there was a meeting in the White House with Johnson about going to war in Vietnam. Look, these people, they assassinated JFK. I don't think anybody questions that anymore. Why? Because they wanted war. And this BS has been going on for a long time. Weapons of mass destruction never existed. They have lied about every single war. And this Ukrainian nonsense is nothing but lies again. At the Munich conference, they knew Putin was on the border. They hand the cue card to Camilla, who just basically reads it like Biden did. Oh, Ukraine should join NATO to make sure he crosses the border. Zelensky stands up. It's in the Daily Caller. Day before the invasion, he stands up and says, oh, Ukraine's going to rearm with nuclear weapons. Even the Washington Post found out that Zelensky knew all about this. And they questioned him, why didn't you not warn your people that Russia was going to cross the border? His response, this is printed in the Washington Post, it would have cost me $7 billion if I told them. These people are sick. They do not care about anybody. They really do not.
Martin, the way we get, forgive me for seeing if there's a connection, but I bring up 11 MPs in Canadian government as being essentially influenced or put in place by foreign governments.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talk about JFK, CIA, et cetera, et cetera. Is there any connection of CIA or outside? Or are you just explaining to me, forgive me for trying to bring it back to Canada for a second, because I'm like, I don't want to add something that isn't there. I'm talking about foreign collusion, and then you go to CIA and what they're willing to do in order to do what they want to do, which eventually leads to war.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, are you making the connection that that is what they ultimately want is war? And so by influencing our government, if it's a liberal government, say, people argue that if it's conservatives, they want war with Russia just as much as the liberals do. But with having foreign collusion or foreign interference, whatever word we're going to tack onto it, folks, to the people in Canada, is there a connection there? Or is it just a story from a different time?
No, it's a connection, but not that the CIA is going into Canada. What's happened is that these neocons that were desperate to prevent Trump from taking power, they lost. All right. They are all now in Paris and London. And they're just pulling all the strings over there.
They're all in Paris and London, and that's where we're trying to align ourselves with.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why Carney and Christine, oh, join Europe. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Hurry up. And how many Canadians do you want to get rid of by sending them over to the front lines there in Ukraine as well? Look, these people are sick. I've said it before. I went to dinner at Mar-a-Lago back in March of 2020 when Trump was president then. And I've met many heads of state all over the globe. And I like to see them eye to eye. I mean, in law, they tell you never joke in court. Why? Because, yeah, sure, I killed JFK too. Oh, see? In black and white, it looks like you confessed. All right? It's how you say something. A transcript in court doesn't pick up the sarcasm. How you say something or not. Okay? And this is the real problem that we have. We don't really understand. You have to look at them eye to eye. So I went to Mar-a-Lago, and that is when Trump actually impressed me. Because he said he wanted to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, but it was the reason. He said he was sick and tired of writing letters to their parents saying your son died for God and country. And he said, what are we doing there? They've been fighting over borders for 1,000 years. What difference are we going to make? So I knew from then that Trump was different. All right. Politicians, look, I knew Maggie Thatcher, he was a good friend. Falklands War, fine, we got to win. They look at it like a football game or something. If there's just collateral damage, yeah, don't worry about that. Trump was the first one because the president does have to send a letter to the family of everybody that dies. And I guess unlike Biden, he was not using a auto pen. And not being a career politician, I don't think he was taught that. It's just collateral damage. Don't think about it. And I had spoken to RFK, and that's why I was basically arguing he should join with Trump. Because he too was against war. He too knew the CIA had taken out his family. We spoke about this. So that's why I was saying the two of them at least, should join forces. And I also knew that Trump and JFK had met back in 2016. And Trump had offered him a vaccine commission. What happened? Pharmaceutical companies bribed everybody on Capitol Hill, shut down that commission, and was shut down maybe 3 months before the COVID vaccine. So I know all the dirt behind the curtain. But I knew the two of them had come to that agreement before. So that's why I argued with him, if you want to make a difference, you better join Trump. At least now you'll get in to do something. All right. Look, it's the people there in government. They don't give two shits about you. They really don't. It's all about them. What can I get? I have to retain power, and they will do anything to retain power. Anything. NATO was concerned that all the money was going to climate change. And so what was going on there? I can tell you. They were deeply concerned and said, how do we remain relevant? Answer, oh, Russia's going to invade Europe. You need us. Give us more money. If Russia's, I've also, in the book I wrote, The Plot to Seize Russia, right in the beginning, I got all the declassified documents from the Clinton administration. Lo and behold, what is there? Russia was invited to join NATO. That led to the Gorbachev coup and Yeltsin standing on the tank in 1991. Don't fire on your own people. And they didn't, and the coup failed. All right. Look, Russia has its hardliners like we do. All right. They saw if Gorbachev agreed and joined NATO, what would happen? Oh, that would be like the surrender to the evil empire. So they were against it. All right. This is, everybody's got their own neocons. You have yours up there. They're just, drooling over war. China has theirs. We have ours. Europe has this. What creates these people? I don't know.
There's a conversation going up north here, Martin, and I've been, on the podcast, we've been talking lots about it because, as we inch closer or speed closer to a federal election, obviously it looks like there's one of two outcomes. One being Pierre Poilievre gets in and the Conservatives take over, or Mark Carney becomes, another version of the Liberal Party, and what that'll set off is a reaction that I don't think I fully understand or am prepared for, or whatever, however I can say it here in Alberta. On back in 2019 it was Wexit, and now there is an independence movement that if that goes off, Mark Carney gets in, the Liberal parties remain in power for however long, another 4 years. The conversation going around everywhere right now that we've been talking about is Alberta independence. And I asked you the last time you were on if you thought that was a good idea, and you said, yeah, I think, honestly, Alberta becoming its own country was a smart idea. When I hear all your stories and the, about all the declassified documents of how they attacked Russia and how, they put these different things in place and how they tried breaking it up, why is Canada different? Why would Alberta separating from Canada be different than what they've been trying to do to Russia?
Well, Russia isn't internally breaking up. The problem that Canada has, as the United States, all right, things have become so polarized. I'm in Florida. I don't even want to go to California. It just, to me, it looks like a complete,
You're saying if my the Cornerstone Forum, the conference in May, was in Ontario, you would have given me a hard no, pretty much. Or
yeah, I think so. But look, back in the 80s when there was big real estate speculation in Toronto, the central bank was raising interest rates to stop that. Meanwhile, they're putting farmers and miners into bankruptcy in the West. This is what I've said about central banks, is that when the Federal Reserve was originally created, it was absolutely perfect. All right. There were 13 branches, but each branch was independent. So you could have 4% interest rates in Colorado to attract money, while it's 2% in New York. All right. And to stimulate the economy, the Fed was supposed to buy corporate paper. That's where this lender of last resorts comes from. All right. So instead of a company, because the banks wouldn't lend it money, it has to lay off employees. They basically, the Fed was to buy corporate short-term paper. Right. Then World War I came. Politicians get involved. Oh, well, we're going to have to issue a lot of debt, and instructed the Federal Reserve to buy government debt. When a government gets involved, putting their hand in the cookie jar, they never put it back. All right. So then you have Roosevelt coming in the 1930s. You still, so World War I ended stimulating the economy directly by buying corporate paper. No more. Then Roosevelt comes in for the Great Depression. He then usurps all the power of the central banks and makes it in Washington one interest rate fits all. Canada has followed that model. Same thing in Europe. This is a disaster because if you're going to focus on, real estate speculation in Toronto while you're putting everybody else into a depression in the West, it shows we have regional difference in economies. U.S. Civil War, the South was mostly agrarian, the North was industrial. All right. Not everybody's the same. So the way they have disrupted how the economy should work, and even central banks, it makes sense for the West to separate from the East. You'll see the same thing in the United States.
If you go back in because one of the things I really admire about you, Martin, is your understanding of history, the cycles. When you look back at history, one of the things I guess I'm trying to figure out is, okay, so let's just assume Carney gets in. It's a big assumption, but let's just assume that happens, and then this movement really gains a huge boost out in Alberta specifically. In history, when a province of a nation tries to leave, what does that province face from, I call it the machine, which is the larger government of, in this case, Canada. But when you look back through different times where, whether it's countries or provinces or states have tried to get out of what they're in, they don't want to be a part of it anymore. I'm tired of this insanity. We're done. What are they up against?
It depends. Maine, for example, used to be part of Massachusetts. They separated. Virginia separated. Dakota separated, North versus South. When it is consensual, it's not an issue.
No, I don't think this is going to be consensual. You're talking about Alberta, which has, just look at, it's an economic powerhouse. Canada is not going to be like, oh, yeah, you want to leave? That's cool. Not a big deal. And you tack on that, the comments made by Donald Trump about 51st state and different things coming out that way, the way Team Canada elbows up have rallied around the United States, the bad guy, how they've called Jeff Rath, who talked about going to D.C. to open up talks just to see what the heck the offer would be if they ever got that far. They called him a traitor, right? Like, you can already see this is not going to be consensual.
Yeah, now, look, there was a party in Quebec, and they even called themselves the 51st state. This idea going Canada and U.S. merging has been around for, since the beginning. Economically, yes, it makes sense. Politically, the left up there vehemently against it. I would question even that taking place, because it wouldn't be, Canada itself wouldn't be the 51st state. You'd have the provinces would each be a state anyhow. And if that were the case, then each state gets 2 senators. You'd have over 20. You'd be a serious bloc in the United States. And then if you join with the Democrats, I think I'm going to have to move to, Aruba or something. But
well, so if you go back through history, Alberta trying to separate, trying to do independence. Let's just play this out. In history, has there been things happen like that? I assume yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it's not consensual, what do they face if they get down that line, a year, 2 years?
Well, that would depend. Would Canada actually raise an army to go invade Alberta? Because that's what it would have to, if they do not consent to that, that's what it would take. But keep in mind, and you can look this up. I think it was Der Spiegel even put them on the front page of the magazine in Germany. The Greens are very pro-war. Why? Because we have to conquer Russia and end its fossil fuel production to save the planet. This is their reasoning. Der Spiegel put it on the front page of their magazine. So it's like, so we're going to do all kinds of nuclear bombs and everything else to save the planet now. It's the reasoning. I don't know. Some of these people, I think they talk to each other so much that they end up in a circle and believing it up is now down. I mean, but I will run our models on Canada to see. I haven't done so recently, but separation is probably inevitable, but it's also separation in the United States and Europe as well. The big problem you have is centralized government. And they, probably the example is definitely Russia. Lenin, although he was communist, he was copying the United States, that each republic would retain its sovereignty. And he also wrote a letter warning, do not let Stalin succeed me. And a lot of Russians think that Stalin even poisoned him. Stalin seized power. He's the one that really created the USSR. Took all the power away from the republics. Nobody was independent anymore. And that was it. Dictatorial control from centralized government. And you have that in Canada, and we have it here in the States. This is the problem. Example, when Camilla was running for president, somebody asked her about abortion, and her response was, "You're at the wrong rally." So in other words, I get in, I don't care about your religion. You can take it and shove it. You're going to do it my way. That's not civilization. But that's where we have come, and that's why all these governments will separate. It's inevitable because we've gone down this dictatorial path that does not work. And that's what you're talking about with Carney. I mean, look, he's deeply involved in the World Economic Forum. He was behind the net zero stuff in Edinburgh. And he's suddenly going to be the opposite. believe in democracy and let people,
Not a chance.
No, absolutely not. I mean, he's going to make it dictatorial. He gets in and he's going to try and screw up Alberta. Simple as that.
And the more he tries to screw Alberta, the more the division grows, and the more the conversation around independence, like, just, you could just see it. I don't know. I could just sit here and I go, if that scenario plays out,
yes, I mean,
I can already see it.
Look, you have states, talking about, you have some of them talking. I mean, even California, they've been talking about separating because Trump became president. I'm like, please leave. It's. I wish you were just you could, swim away from the United States and take it out to the middle of the Pacific. That would be very nice. But I mean, it's. They've gone way, way too far. The Democrats in the United States, I stood up at our conference last November. I said, look, this is what the computer shows. The Democratic Party will collapse. And it's going to go extinct. It will split. And everyone said, oh, really? I said, yes. Now all I get, oh my God, every article they read, Democrats are fighting amongst each other. They refuse to accept that woke was bad. It was Trump, it was rigged, or this, that. They don't want to give up their ideas. And this is the problem. People are fed up with this nonsense. I mean, I have one Democratic friend voted for Trump and sent me a photograph of the picture on the restroom. You know who I'm voting for. When you don't know who, Biden put in the Jackson, the black female, to the Supreme Court only because she's female and she's black. That's the only qualification. Not legal or anything else. And then somebody asked her, what is the definition of a woman? Oh, I don't really know. You don't know that? And you're going to the Supreme Court. I mean, look, a woman can have a child. Hello? State of Maine went off the rails at outlawing the words father and mother because it might offend somebody that doesn't have one. So what am I supposed to call my mother? Hey, you, it? I mean,
on a Canadian side of things, Martin, I have it on very good authority. This is years ago now, that Hockey Night in Canada, right? Big, like, I grew up watching it every Saturday night. Ron McLean, Don Cherry, and one of the lines was boys and girls of all ages, and they weren't allowed to say that. And they're not allowed to say that. I would argue that you could probably go watch and never hear that line said. And why is that? Because it could offend people. You're like, boys and girls of all ages? Are you insane? Like, that's where we're at? Like, you can't see how insane that is? That's insane. And yet, Trump comes out, says his piece on not allowing, boys and girls, and there's only two sexes, and on and on. And then Carney comes out and says, the U.S. can have its war on woke, but we're going to be inclusive here. And you're like, we're insane. We're an insane point of history. And if that man gets in, like I say, I just keep coming back to it. This talk of Alberta independence is going to go through the moon, past the moon. And I go, but as I say that, Canada doesn't want us to go. And they're not going to let us go willingly. I mean, we've been talking about that. The audience has heard a lot of different comments made by a lot of different people through Canada, even just as recently as yesterday with the Vesper conversation, that, it's not going to be like a cakewalk of, just see you later. That's not the way this works. Like, it's going to be a long, drawn-out process if you could ever even get it there to a referendum, and then on from there.
Well, the first thing you have to do is just refuse to pay taxes um, to Ottawa. You just you pay your taxes locally here. That's it. We'll hold it, and no money goes to the feds. They're talking about stuff like that here in the States as well. So I mean, this is the problem. They've just gone so far. I mean, we have one gay guy that worked in the company. Even he's confused. He says there's like 70 different labels. I don't even know what anything is anymore. I mean, and they feel now that they've gotten more bias or prejudice out of this, not less, because
because there's more divisions created everywhere. Everything's a division now.
And look, I mean, we have offices in Thailand. That's the sex change capital of the world. They're all over the place, okay? And they call themselves ladyboys. Fine. They don't say, you have to call me a woman. And if you call your mother a mother, that offends me. I mean, where's all this stuff coming from? Just because you get a sex change doesn't mean you're a woman. All right. Everywhere else outside of this, they call themselves a ladyboy. All right. Fine. I don't care what they do. That's up to them. But when you start saying, to other people that there is, you're offending me by even using that word. Now you're infringing upon me. Oh, I can't call my mother a mother. She's a birthing machine. Now you're affecting my life. All right. For what? I mean, I was in Philadelphia, and I don't know if you've heard them or if they've been up there. They call them the slut walk. All these girls walking down the street in a parade in their underwear. I said, what the hell is going on here? Oh, they're protesting that this is the way men look at them. So you dress the way you think men are looking at you. I mean, I was like, okay.
There's Martin in the stands cheering them on. Good job, ladies.
I mean, I was like, okay. I mean, it's. I don't get it. I mean, but they seem to go every which way to, from Sunday. I don't know. So, I'm going to walk around naked because I'm protesting the fact that that's the way you see me. I mean, I don't, it's okay. That's a good one.
Well, Martin, I appreciate you hopping on today. And I don't know if I'll talk to you before May 10th, but my hope is that we see you in Canada May 10th on stage at the Cornerstone Forum. If people haven't paid attention to tickets and they haven't heard that, barring the Canadian government doing something really silly, Martin's going to be there in person, which will be it is going to be an interesting day. And certainly the timing of the Canadian election now, there could be a whole new series of topics getting discussed, between here and there, obviously, because, when we first scheduled the day and I was talking about, okay, this is going to be amazing. Yep. Everybody's looking at October. Oh, we're going to have election October. And then, Trump gets in and a whole lot of things have carried on since then. And it has been an interesting ride, as we say around here. It's almost like everything changes, if not hour to hour, certainly day by day. And the next 26 up here in the Great White North is going to be interesting, to say the least.
Well, I can tell you that our computer turns up for Ukrainian war May 15th. May 18th is the elections in Poland. And Tusk has already basically said all males should report for military training.
Who said that?
The head of Poland. They want war. I'm telling you. They. This is completely insane.
Well, Martin, it's never a dull moment having you on the show, and appreciate it. Look forward to shaking your hand in person. And until then, appreciate it. And yes, keep up what you're doing. We'll be paying attention.
Well, take care. I hope I'm allowed in there and Carney doesn't arrest me at the border. You know.
Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Maxime Bernier. So, sir, thanks for hopping on again in your busy trails. I've been paying attention. You've been on every show known to man, it seems, and I'm happy you decided to hop on this side.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Very pleased to be with you.
I do want to say this before we begin, as I talk about, somebody asked me about Pierre Poilievre. When's he coming on? I'm like, well, one of the things about the CP, like the Conservative Party of Canada, is have you seen him doing any of this circuit? One of the things that I do admire about you, Maxime, is you've been on pretty much every show, and your team is very, very aggressive in the best possible way of like, can we make this work? How can we make it work? And I appreciate that. So I appreciate you coming on. And to anyone sitting there going, when's Pierre coming on? If you want him to come on, start harassing him, because I've been trying to get on some former guests on this side, and they won't even come on until after the election. So I think we can all see that certain people they don't want to rock the boat. Maxime, one of the things that I do admire all over again about you is they gave me the list of like, you can ask Maxime about any of this. I'm like, oh my goodness, what a smorgasbord of things. Where do you want to start with talking to Western Canadians? How about we start there?
Yeah, first, I must say that, don't be upset. Poliev, sorry, Poliev maybe won't go on your show. He didn't do Patrick Bet David, and as you know, he was asking him, but he didn't have any call return from his team. You're right. He's not doing podcasts. I'm doing podcasts. I think it's very important. Same thing with Trump. Trump did podcast, and Harris did not. So now people want from their politicians, to be more transparent, to be able to sit down with you or another podcaster, to be able to answer questions for 45 minutes, an hour 30 minutes. For me, it is part now on the election campaign. I said to my team, I'm on the ground here now. I'm at PI. We have a big event tonight. And after that, I will be in Toronto. But yeah, it's good to be on the ground and meet people. But I'll try also to have the opportunity to do podcasts. And I don't have any any taboo subject. For me, you can ask anything. If I don't have the answer, I'll tell you. But that's why, it's always fun to be out there. And for me, that's a great opportunity to be present, to be visible. Actually, as you know, the mainstream media is canceling us. They don't want to speak about us. It's like we don't exist. But that being said, they're not the future. The future is guys like you, podcaster, and more people are taking their news with the alternative media and podcasts like yours. So the fact that I'm with you, I'm very happy, and we will have a great conversation.
Well, let's start with conservatives, because they're worried you're splitting the vote. They're worried you're a political operative. They're worried about three different things all down the rabbit holes of the conservatives. Let's start there. What would you say to the people that think you're going to split the vote? You're just there for Maxime and that train of thought?
Yeah. First, we don't split any vote. Who's splitting the vote? It is Poliev. Poliev wants to have more support in big cities like Toronto and Montreal, and is splitting the liberal votes. He's going, to the left a little bit. If you look at his platform on immigration, on climate change, on the equalization payments, it's all the same like the one of the liberals. So people who are saying, I like you, Maxime, but I don't want to vote with you for you, sorry, because I will split the vote. That being said, if you like what I'm saying and you think that it's the best program for the part for the country, sorry, you must vote for what you believe. You'll have more chances to have what you want. And for us, we are your last hope for this country, and we will keep Polyev honest. We will support the conservatives when they will be conservative, and we will shame them when they won't. So for us, don't blame me. And I'm saying to people who said, "Oh, I will split the vote." If Polyev is not able to win, don't blame me. It's not my fault if he's not a real conservative. If he's a weak leader, a leader that is following public opinion and polls. We are not. We are doing politics by conviction with ideas, and we don't change. It's always the same ideas since the creation of that party. I'm saying the same thing at every election. So that be said, Polyev is the master of his own destiny, and so don't blame me for that. But our goal is to be more influential, and we may be the big surprise of this election, as you know, with polls and focus group, and they don't mention us. I don't believe these polls, as some of them are fake. We'll see. The big result will be one at the election day. I can tell you that we have up to there 322 candidates all across the country that are campaigning right now and ready to fight for Canadians. So almost every Canadian will have an opportunity to vote for the People's Party. And I hope they will vote in line with their conscience. I hope they will vote for what they believe. If not, because they want to support Polyev, but they will need us because Polyev is not a real conservative. He is, like in the state, a rhino, conservative in name only, on the most important issues.
I'm glad you brought up candidates because I did want to give a shout out. I've had 3 of your candidates on the show before, never as PPCers. I don't think. Forgive me, folks, if I'm wrong on that. Dr. David Speaker, he's running in Hamilton Center. People out here for the Injection of Truth will know that name. Megan Murphy, Vancouver East. So shout out to Megan. She's been on Joe Rogan multiple times. And then Jason Levine, who was on the show. I think he was on a couple of weeks ago. He's running in Parkland here in Alberta. And I guess one of the things that we talked about a little over a year ago, the first time he came on the podcast, was the national debate. Forgive me, Maxime. I feel like part of the conversation was basically, well, you're going to be on the national debate this year. That's going to change things. And then we fast forward a year, and maybe that's not so. Can you bring me up to speed on what is going on here?
Yeah, actually, they created a rule, a criteria at the last election. They said for Bernier and the People's Party, you need to have 4% of the vote at the previous election. So in 2021, we had 1.6% of the vote. And so we were not able to participate in the national debates at the last election. But that criteria, we had 5% of the vote at the last election. So for this election, we were supposed to participate. They said more than 4% at the previous election. We had 5. That being said, I had an interview with the leaders debate commissions last summer, and they said, Maxime, we need to have an interview with you. Sorry, we want to have an interview with every leader because we want to know what will be the best format for the next debate. And I said, perfect, I'm ready to participate and I'm ready to give you my input. And that was great. And they told my team, yes, Bernier will be part. He is in line with the criteria. So you had 5%. We were asking for 4. That's why we want to do that interview. But couple of weeks later, They came and they said, oh, they published a press release and they came up with 3 new criteria, and just to be sure that they will exclude us, and that's what they did yesterday. So that commission is just there to exclude the People's Party of Canada. That's their role. They don't want us. Uh, and you must ask who's sitting at the board of that Leaders Debate Commission. Former conservative MPs. So for them, they are putting pressure, they are changing the rules just to be sure that every election I won't be able to participate in these national debates. That's the situation. That's a very, when they're doing that, they're censoring 840,000 people who voted for us at the last election, and that won't be a real debate without us.
I can see that your voice is probably being taxed. I'm assuming you're going like a bullet train, Maxime. If at all you need to stop for a glass of water, you just let us know, okay? We
Yeah.
won't hold you here. One of the things that has been on my mind has been Russia, Ukraine. All of our leaders are going to continue to support Ukraine. We're going to send money over there. On and on it goes. You see, it was Chrystia Freeland that talked about, aligning ourselves with France and England and nuclear powers against the states and all this craziness. And I'm like, this can't, like, is this literally happening? This is literally happening. Your thoughts on Russia, Ukraine, and are maybe and maybe a second part would that be the relationship with the United States?
Yes, Russia and Ukraine. We said in the beginning that it is not our war. We must not participate in that war. That was not the case. Polyev and Trudeau at that time, and the Liberals, they were and they are pro-war. Polyev and Carney are ready to give more, resources to Ukraine. And I don't like that. We did spend $20 billion that we gave to Ukraine. Ukraine is a corrupt government. Our enemy is not Russia. Actually, our enemy in Canada is our own government. You just remember what they did to us during COVID-19 with all these draconian measures. That being said, I'm very pleased that President Trump is working for a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. And, we must support that. And our position is in line with President Trump. We want to have a peace deal as soon as possible. And we must admit that, Ukraine lost the war. That's the situation right now. Let's have a trade, let's have a peace deal. Let's be sure that Ukraine will be neutral, not part of NATO. And I can tell you that we'll have a deal as soon as possible if everybody is pushing in that direction. So we'll see. But for us, we must not participate in that war anymore. And that was a big mistake to send money that we don't have to Ukraine. And for the US, yes, for the trade war, I'm the only one and the only national politician who said that we must not impose counter tariffs to US and at the end to us Canadians, because these tariffs are a tax on Canadians. We are paying for the imports coming from the US. The prices would go up by 25%. So it is a tax. And when we did that, and now, today, Trump may impose other tariffs on the import that we are from the US. So we must not participate in that. I said that, the best deal will be to put everything on the table, the supply management system, the cartel in dairy, poultry, and eggs, to be sure to have that trade deal with Trump. And if he's imposing tariffs, he's imposing tariffs on his own citizens, on American businesses, American consumers. So, and when we are imposing tariff on us, counter tariffs, we are not helping our economy. Our economy may go into a recession because also the US and that market is 10 times bigger than us. Our counter tariffs won't affect so much American businesses. So it's crazy to do that. I don't know what will be the reaction of the federal government today or tomorrow. But that being said, it is the wrong solution to be in a trade war with US.
Well, today, as we're recording this, it's Liberation Day in the States, as they've kind of, it's been coined. How do you see? I don't know. How do you see that hurting, helping? The liberals, the conservatives. This march towards Election Day. Does this change anything for everyone running? If Trump comes out hard against everyone.
But for me, the conservative and the liberals are having the same position and will have the same position. Actually, Stephen Harper did write a letter in the National Post 3 weeks ago, and he said, and don't forget, Stephen Harper is the advisor, is advising Pierre Poilievre, and he said, we must retaliate dollar for dollar, and it may hurt us, our economy. We may be in a recession, but that's okay. We must do it. It's crazy. They're telling Canadians, yeah, Trump is imposing tariffs on the export coming from Canada to the US. We must do the same. We love you so much, Canadians, and we love our country so much that yes, we will create a recession and we'll put another tax on new consumers, 25%, and maybe another 25%. I don't know, but that's crazy. So the reaction from the liberals and the conservatives are the same. They are in the same boat, and their goal during this campaign is the enemy is Trump, and they want to do everything to show to Canadians that they are, fighting for our country against Trump. For me, Trump is not the enemy. Trump is doing that. Let him do what he wants to do. Just be sure that our economy would be more productive, lower taxes to everybody, balance the budget, cut spending, and with the surplus, do what is best is lowering taxes to businesses and individuals in Canada. That is what we must do, not being part of that trade war and with counter tariffs.
Well, you've been out. One of the things sitting out here in the West, you're out traveling the East. I believe you mentioned you're in PEI today. What are what's the East side of Canada saying when it comes to how Canada's reacting to Trump? Because, sitting out here, I'm not traveling around Ontario or Quebec or the Maritimes, and hearing what everyday people are saying. We're seeing what the reaction of premiers is, what the prime minister's doing, what the official opposition's doing. We're hearing how media is portraying it, which I think we can both sit here and going through COVID, we probably both agree we don't trust much of what the media says. But regardless, when it comes to Donald Trump, they all seem to be in unison, positioning him as a big, scary orange man. When you're walking around talking to people, what do you see or hear?
I'm saying that the mainstream media is very powerful. People here, they are scared of President Trump. They are listening to mainstream media and that narrative a little bit during COVID-19. So you just have to tell them and educate them about the situation. When I'm telling them that, what Trudeau did impose, the 25 tariffs, that was not against Trump. You are paying these tariffs. And you need to explain that. When they understand that, it's easy, they're coming on our side and they understand. But the propaganda coming from the mainstream media and also the conservative, the liberals, and the NDP, it's very efficient. I must admit that. Very efficient. And now the election, if you listen, people all across the country, must be about, the independence and the sovereignty of our country. our independence is not at risk. Maybe economically, if Trump is imposing these tariffs for a long term, I think it would be only in short term before we have a real free trade agreement with him. But that will have an impact on our economy. But what we must do is to be sure to have a more productive economy. And they're not speaking about that, the mainstream establishment politicians.
When it comes to 51st state, I personally think the debate's been settled on whether or not Canada as a whole should become the 51st state. I think that'd be a terrible idea for not only the United States, but certainly anyone who isn't in Ontario or Quebec. That'd be a horrific idea. But since out of that has come Alberta, the idea of them becoming the 51st state or some shape or form in that. When you're looking at this, and you probably understand as good as any politician how Westerners feel towards the East right now, specifically towards the Liberal Party as they've been in for the last 10 years. What are your thoughts on hearing that there's rumblings of Alberta wanting out? And how would you address that?
I'm not surprised about that, actually. That separatist sentiment in Western Canada is normal because, Ottawa uh, did not and does not listen to you guys in Western Canada. Uh, you wanted to have a change in the equalization payments. You're paying for everybody, and you don't like that. You want that equalization formula. You want that formula to be fair for every province, and you have the liberal and the conservatives uh, who are not speaking about that, and also at the same time you want to develop your own natural resources, and you have the federal government that is saying, oh no, we will impose more regulation, you cannot do that, you must be part of the climate accord, Paris Climate Accord. Polyev and Carney are saying that. So you're fed up with that. I can understand it. And just before answering the question, I will tell you, sorry, what I did. In 1995, we had a referendum in Quebec for the independence. Me, Maxime Bernier, I did vote yes. I vote yes at that referendum. You must ask why. Because I'm a federalist, a real federalist. I believe in this country, but I believe in this country like the fathers of our Constitution did and wrote in our Constitution. That's supposed to be a federalism that will be decentralized and with the federal government that will respect provincial jurisdictions. That was, a country with a lot of autonomy for provincial government. That was the constitution. For I don't know how many years, the federal government is not respecting that constitution. Actually, recently, as you know, Trudeau did implement social national programs like daycare, dental care, and these programs are unconstitutional. Healthcare is a exclusive provincial jurisdiction. We will abolish this problem, problem, yeah, but these programs. And Polyev and Carney won't do anything. So I voted yes for to be sure that Quebec would be respected and the federal government won't interfere in provincial jurisdictions. So after that referendum, nothing happened at the federal level. So I decided to jump into politics in 2006 and to fight to have a smaller government in Ottawa that will respect provincial autonomy. I was with Harper for 13 years, and Harper was a good manager of a big fat government, and he did increase the equalization payments and change the formula to be sorry, more generous to Quebec. So that's why I decided to jump into federal politics. And now we created the People's Party, and that's the only party that will give what Alberta wants. You want your own police force, you'll have it. You want your own pension plan, you'll have it. You want to be able to develop your natural resources without any interference by the federal government, you'll have it. So we will give everything that Quebec has. Every province must be able to have it. radical decentralization and smaller government. That's the only way to save this country. This country is going, down the drain. And if we don't do anything the next 15 years, we can say goodbye to Canada. And that goodbye can come with Albertan. So answering your question about Alberta separatists, I'm okay with that. I hope that you'll have a referendum in Alberta, and I hope that you will vote yes. Because if you do that, maybe the federal government and the Conservative Party and the Liberals will take you seriously. They didn't take Quebec seriously. Quebec didn't win the referendum with 49%, but maybe if you have a referendum and you win it, that's the only way to change this country. So if you do that, and if you do that and you have a referendum and you win it, I will be the first leader at the national level that will say, vote yes, I'm with you. You need that to be respected. Vote yes, and these establishment political parties maybe will change the way that they're doing politics. Maybe, we will push them, and I will do that with you, because our platform is a radical decentralization and you'll have more autonomy. So that's why I'm behind you. I understand your point. I was there in 1995. Nothing happened in Quebec, and maybe you can be successful here. I'm encouraging you to vote yes, and because this country right now, we are not respecting our constitution, and you are fed up with that. So we are the solution. We, the People's Party, for a united country. Actually, our proposal on equalization is to cut equalization payments by half. We are giving $26 billion in equalization to provinces, and the federal government must cut that by half, $13 billion instead of 26, and change the formula to be fair for every province.
I'm curious, just on a side note, do you love election season? I go back to how hard you're pushing yourself, probably how many times you're doing radio shows, talking to people for the short period this is. Is this something you enjoy? Or are you like, man, this is about as hard as I could push my body to go?
No, I like what I'm doing. I'm pushing hard. It's great to do it. That I have a little cold right now, and I think in 2 days everything will be okay. But my challenge is yesterday I did an event and we didn't have a mic, and so I was speaking loud, and my voice at the end of the
Yeah, you got to improvise.
at the end of the day, I didn't have any voice. So my team told me, Maxime, we'll have a mic now at every of your events. But that being said, yeah, we're doing politics based on ideas. We know that we have the best ideas to save this country. And if Canadians uh, don't want our ideas, they will pay the price. They will pay the price with higher prices, with inflation, with big deficit, with a big government in Ottawa that will tell them what to do, and maybe with the risk of having Quebec or Alberta that will vote for the separation. So let's work together, and that's our platform, and that's why we are the real alternative for Western Canadians.
I'm curious. You've brought up Pierre. You've brought up Harper. One of the things that I think the West wants to understand is Carney. How much do you know of the man? Have you been around him at all in your time? Just curious your thoughts quickly on the new bench boss, if you will, of the Liberal Party of Canada.
Yes, when I was a Conservative MP, Carney at that time was the governor of the Bank of Canada, and he did come to our Finance Parliamentary Commission, and I did ask him a lot of questions. So Carney, I know him professionally. Carney is, part of the elite. He believes that he knows better than you. He is a big globalist. He was the special envoy for climate action and finance for the UN. So he wrote a book on climate change, and also on a carbon tax. Now, it's all the opposite. What Carney, the politician, is doing right now It's not what Carney was promoting when he was in the private sector. So I don't know if he will deliver or not. But that being said, Carney is a technocrat, and I don't trust him. I don't trust Polyev also. I was a conservative, and we had a minority government in 2006, another minority government in 2008. When we had a majority government in 2011, I said to myself, okay, Harper will be a real conservative. He will cut programs, privatization, smaller government. But no, Harper did nothing. Harper didn't have any legacy right now. Trudeau destroyed everything in his first year in power. Harper was looking at the polls and wanted to be sure to be reelected with a majority. That did not happen. So Polyev will do the same. Polyev, doesn't have the courage to do bold reforms because he's listening to the polls and people in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. He's afraid of the mainstream media. So there's no bold reform there. And he will do, if he has a majority, he will do like Harper did for the West. They're laughing at you. The conservatives are laughing at you. They're taking your vote for granted. You're voting conservative. You did vote for Harper. We had a majority. And what Harper did? He did the biggest deficit of the history of our country during this time. Yes, he was able to bring back a balanced budget in 2019, but in 2015. But he was a guy who likes to govern and with programs and giving subsidies to businesses and all that. Polyev will be the same. They're
What,
doing politics by survey and not by conviction.
Maxime, I'm curious, because we've all watched, Trump's first term in the States. Everybody said he underestimated, the swamp or the bureaucracy that's sitting there. There's many a term for it, right? Deep state, on and on these things go. You look at Harper and you look at what his track record was until he became Prime Minister of Canada. And it looked like he was ready to go do some bold reform. I would argue. I don't know if you'll agree with that, but that's what it looked like. Then he gets in, and then all of a sudden, everything you just said and on. And some people say, he's the greatest prime minister we've ever had. And some will say he led us closer and closer to, the Paris Climate Accord. And, not then, now it's Agenda 2030. But back then, I think it was 2021, if memory serves me correct. Yeah. And you go on and on. When I look at this, I'm like, you've been around this. What makes you believe you can walk into there and actually cut and get through the red tape and the bureaucracy that fat government has become?
No, they won't do it because, when you cut, you cannot please to everybody. They won't do it. When I'm saying they're doing politics by survey, you can say, Maxime, if they're doing that, 75% of the population agree with you about ending mass immigration. So Polyev must be must do that. But no, Polyev is for mass immigration with a minimum of 250,000 a year, plus the refugees, plus the fake students, plus the international.
I guess I'll rephrase it. I understand the things about Pierre. I think we've all been watching. We're watching how there's certain hot topics. A little bit. I'm going to stand off. I'm looking at you, and I'm looking at the PPC. Right? You get elected into however many seats it is. Now, as my brain works, now you work with the Conservatives to vote through the things. You hold them to the fire. I think I'm listening to what you said earlier.
Yeah.
Right? The idea is you get to pull them further right.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm just curious, everybody has these, I'm going to walk through and I'm going to slash and hack and everything else, but the bureaucracy is thick. And if I'm understanding what Justin Trudeau's legacy will be, is it is a giant government. How? By electing the PPC, by having people there that have, that are representing their ridings and and trying to hold the Conservatives right. How can they do things? Like, explain this to people so they can be like, this makes sense to put you guys in there so you can hold Pierre and the Conservatives, assuming they get in, to the right instead of falling further and further to the left?
Yeah, so the answer to that is because what we said the last 6 years, 7 years, it's always the same program and the same platform. At every election, we don't do polling to try to have a new platform. We're doing politics by conviction and ideas. And we are speaking about these ideas before and after an election. And that will be the same thing at the next election in 2029. So when we'll be in power, we will have the legitimacy to do what we said. There's no secret agenda, and we'll do it. And I hope that we will have some protests. If we don't have any protests in Ottawa, that's because we're not doing our job. But yes, the bureaucracy, we need to cut spending, we need to have a smaller government. But and also because our economy is going down the drain, and our standard of living is going down the drain, that will be the bold reform or revolution that we will need to do. If we are not in government at this election, we may be in a very strong position at the next one. I don't know what will happen at that election. Everything can happen in politics. But what I'm telling you, we will have the mandate to execute what we were saying the last 5, 6, 10 years. That will be the mandate, and nobody will be able to stop us. Look at Trump today. Trump has a mandate. Trump decided, he said, okay, I know what it is to be inside. I was not a very efficient prime minister, president of the U.S. My first mandate. I know what to do. I'm doing that right now. We'll do the same. I know the deep state in Ottawa. I did a telecom reform. My own civil servant were fighting against me to be sure that I won't be able to deregulate the telecom industry. I did fight. I was able to win. The deep state is there. You just need to be out there and with a strong mandate, and you'll be able to do what you said to the population that you will do.
Maxime, I appreciate you battling through on having to yell the day before, no microphone and everything else. Appreciate you hopping on. I gotta say, a guy who supports a referendum and hopes we vote yes here in Alberta, and a guy who's voted yes once upon a time in Quebec, and uh, that's interesting to me, if nothing else. Appreciate you hopping on, giving us some time today, and all the best in your travels here over the next, what are we at, 26 days roughly. Yeah, hopefully the voice doesn't get too taxed. Either way, thanks for hopping on again, and well, I'm sure people will be paying attention to the PPC, even though the national debate has been pulled from under your feet. That one surprised, I think, a lot of us. But either way, appreciate you hopping on and giving us some time today.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for giving me that opportunity. Let's stay in touch. And if your viewers want to know more about the People's Party, they can always go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca. They can click on our platform. They can read it. If they like it, I hope they will support us. I hope they will go out and vote. And, they can trust us because the platform is based on four principles that are very important for us: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. And we will always fight for Canadians. And, that's the People's Party. That's our name, and that's what we want to do. Thank you again. Have a nice